You want to feel bad for yourself, feel bad for yourself. But it does not go longer than 24 hours, because you can make some poor decisions when you react on emotion.
Welcome to this week's As Unexpected podcast, when we talk to C-suite executives, entrepreneurs, and philanthropists about how they lead into the future when the future generally goes as unexpected. I'm Scott Marshall, your host, and my own professional experience has made me a believer that it's not how you show up when all goes as planned, but it is how you show up when things go as unplanned. Given all of their experiences, each of our guests has become very attuned to the fact that the future is not to be predicted. My hope is that this podcast can help all of you become better leaders by building the core leadership capabilities for leading in an uncertain world. Welcome to another episode of the As Unexpected podcast. I'm super excited, really excited. We have not met in person yet, but here she is, live from New York City, just off Park Avenue. Please welcome Shay Bolton. Shay, welcome to the As Unexpected podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. You were smack dab in Midtown Manhattan.
Awesome. I love that area. Love walking that city end to end. So thanks so much for joining. If you don't mind starting off by giving our audience an introduction to yourself, sort of your career pathway and where you're at now. Why are you right there smack dab in the middle of Manhattan?
Oh my gosh, this is definitely one of the as unexpected stories that I'll kick off into. But I've actually been in New York City now for about 2 years, but I spent the majority of my commercial real estate career in Los Angeles. And right in the thick of the pandemic, my company, Savills, offered me an opportunity to move to our North American headquarters, which is in New York City. And here I am. So that was an extreme pivot that I did not expect, but I'm very happy that I did.
That's a perfect intro right there. Framing
Do you
the episode.
Want to know what I do for a living?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
The lead up, what were you doing in LA for Savills and even before that?
Yeah, of course. So Savills North America, it's the largest commercial real estate company that no one's ever heard of. Reason being is we only work with companies. We are a tenant representation firm. We were actually Studley that was acquired by Savills back in the day. And in LA, I was working with a lot of tech, media, entertainment clients, representing their real estate interests. So as companies grow and scale, we accommodate those needs by helping them kind of navigate what their footprint should look like on a global scale. So not only are we working in Los Angeles or New York City, what have you, we're representing organizations all over the world.
Very cool. Very cool. And currently, as managing director of Savills North America, give us some context for what that's like.
So as corporate managing director in New York City, I co-lead a team. We have a great group out here in New York City. Luckily, we do a lot of portfolio business. So touching on that global occupier component, we're working with organizations predominantly kind of in the financial sector. We work with a lot of hedge funds, private equity, banks, candidly, anyone who physically occupies space, which can be somewhat of a not touchy subject, but everyone's talking about it, is how are we returning to work? What does the workplace look like today? And we kind of help and guide, consult for these companies to kind of make sure that they better understand how to do that, given, as an organization, and I know you're familiar with this as well, your top 2 expenses as a company are your people and your real estate. So again, we're kind of trying to manage what that impact to their bottom line looks like and how we can save them hopefully a couple $1 million, if not more.
That's a great picture. Thanks for sharing a more complete view of the work. Yeah. So for us, of course, we rent or charter one large asset.
Right.
The cost of that asset for us on an annual basis is much more significant than our very small footprint for office here. So,
correct.
Yes.
Correct. So you might not need to hire me, but you know where to find me.
Well, if you're starting to use ships as office space, let me know.
Yeah. If we pivot that way, actually, that would be so exciting. Like, hey, I'll meet you guys in the middle of the Indian Ocean.
Exactly.
For this conference.
So, Shay, Obviously, the main theme of this episode or this podcast overall is how leaders show up when things go as unexpected. And you've already shared a couple examples of your own journey dealing with the as unexpected. Do you have some more comprehensive views or deeper stories about how you've had to face some very unexpected dynamics in your work, and most importantly, how you showed up for yourself in that circumstance and how you showed up for your team?
Oh my goodness. Yes, I have plenty of stories. It was funny when I do a handful of these speaking engagements, whether it's panels, podcasts, you're in front of a big audience and you want to share the stories to like touching on how your journey has made you you. And you always want to tell the stories that have like frills and make you look, all of the things. But like that lacks as a leader, as someone who's trying to raise up men and women, into this business. I just don't think you can do that without vulnerability. And so I thought about that. I was like, should I tell like the glitz and the glamour stories that make me look so good? But I'm not going to do that because there's certain stories that I think are really important to touch on that kind of led me to where I am, because I do not have enough fingers and toes to count the amount of times I wanted to leave this business, because it is, for those who don't know much about commercial real estate, it's very much you eat what you kill. It's high risk, it's high reward, very, very similar to the financial industries. And it's hard. It's really hard. And I think when you go through this roller coaster of emotions, these waves of highs and lows, it can be very discouraging. So I kind of wanted to touch on probably my first disappointment in my career, as I was actually fired. And I had never been fired. I was like 24, 25 years old. And I didn't understand why I was fired, because I was like, I am crushing it. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And my senior partner at the time, this woman that I was working for and with, I guess we weren't aligned on my role and certain things. And I won't get into the intricacies of what that was. But I remember her telling me, and she sat me down, and I saw her as such a mentor. Like I saw her as like a sister. And I remember thinking, and I'm just so in shock, like devastated. It wrecked me. And I remember her telling me, and she was just like, I just don't think this business is for you. I do not think this industry is for you. And I just was so disheartened. And I remember being like, okay, and I did the whole woe is me thing for probably a week. And I'm very grateful that my father, who was a commercial real estate executive in Scottsdale, Arizona, who kind of, for the good, the bad, and the ugly, got me into this business. He kind of always told me, he's like, all right, you got knocked down, you've got to get back up. And I'm like, okay, well, how many times in this business do I have to get back down and get back up? And I think you start looking at it like, okay, when I get knocked down, I get back up. And then when you get knocked down harder, you get back up harder.
There you go.
And I think that was kind of a mindset that I've really have ingratiated in myself and everybody and everything that I know, because you get knocked down a lot and things go as unexpected on a daily basis, candidly, in our business, because as you can imagine, a deal changes, a company shifts their mindset. There's, maybe there's some layoffs, maybe they're reducing workforce and square footage, and the whole runs the gamut on what can change and what can go as unexpected on a day-to-day basis. So I think you have to have that mindset. Optimism is key.
Yeah. So first of all, let me just applaud you for being vulnerable, sharing a story of this really difficult impact, really difficult decision that your former supervisor made on you when you were very early in your career. And now in really quite a high level position with, I'm sure, a team that reports to you and a large organization. When you face those kind of unexpected situations, how do you show up, first of all, for yourself? And then I'd like to explore more how you show up for those around you. But how do you show up for yourself?
I think I have to give myself a minute to feel. I think for so long, I work in a very male dominated business. So I think for so long, and as I was growing in my career, I thought I had, like, as a woman, I needed to kind of be like a man. You're trying to personify all of these different characters and qualities throughout what you're absorbing in your day to day. And so you're kind of taught that just like you're hard, you're aggressive, there's no room for feelings. And I think that was kind of, again, I think that's more of an antiquated approach. I wouldn't say that's more today's day and age, but that was something that was very much embedded in me and what I thought I had to, put out into the world. And so I think as time has gone on in my career and personally, professionally, I've learned that I have to give myself a moment to feel, but I don't give myself more than like 24. If like you want to feel bad for yourself. But like it does not go longer than 24 hours, because you can make some poor decisions when you react on emotion. So I highly encourage people, especially if it's an email, a phone call, sleep on it. Do not react in the heat of that emotion. You got to give yourself a moment to feel, but like sit back and digest.
There's so much in what you've said. I'd like to pick a couple things and explore them a little further, if you don't mind. First of all, feel the feels. And I know, well, as a older professional, as a male, the stereotype around males, we can't express our emotions and so forth. And I have learned that I certainly am an emotional creature. And I will do better exactly doing what you've suggested. And that is feel the feels, be honest with yourself. And not only that, it's okay if others know that I'm feeling the feels, that this is hurtful or that, I'm upset or I'm angry or whatever, because that's that authenticity, right? That's a real human. Oh, because they can feel the same thing. They need to know that those in higher level positions are no different than the men, that they get hurt, that they get angry, they get disappointed.
I think I was touching on your point. It goes back to vulnerability, and you're like, how do you show up for your team? If it calls for it, I will be vulnerable in front of my team. You want people to know that, one, you're not a robot. Yeah. You're an emotional person. You feel what they're feeling and vice versa. And you kind of want to have that open forum so that people feel, one, that it's a safe space, that you're entitled to your emotions in that moment, in that space, in that situation.
This episode of As Unexpected is sponsored in part by Semester at Sea, a study abroad program for college students and adults on career breaks, sabbaticals, or retired, interested in learning and exploring the world together. Learn more about the Lifelong Learner program at www.semesteratsea.org. The second thing I wanted to see if you could expand on is, you've done a lot beyond this current role to really empower women. You're one of the co-founders of Chief. You are very involved in this organization. I'd love for you to explain further, Boss Women Media Group. So I'd love for you to expand on all of that as a way to really lift up women in the workforce professionally.
Yeah, I think, again, when I started in my career, I didn't have many women. And the one woman that I did have, I ended up being incredibly discouraged by. And I just didn't want that to jade my perspective and be so jaded in my way of life and my career. So I think that evolved over time with respect to Chief. So in Chief, I'm a founding member. Of Chief. I'm a founding member. Chief is an executive women's organization that started actually out of New York. They've expanded. I think as of today, it is national. I think we were global for a hot second, but I don't want to misspeak. So I believe it's now national. So I think it basically is curated to women in VP to C-suite level roles to integrate with one another, to find opportunities to work with each other, to grow, to learn from one another, whether it's professionally or personally. You have your own cohorts of different women where you kind of get together, and we get together monthly and talk about our day and what we're doing and how can we help one another? What are you going through that maybe someone else in the group's already been through that they can lend a hand? And it's been a great resource for me, especially being new to New York City, to have this resource and this platform of like-minded women that are at similar stages in their career and then some to really rely on and work with and just candidly have as close friends as time has proven.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, it's a very cool group.
It sounds like it. And I have noticed many women on LinkedIn are noting that they're founding members or members of Chief. And so I've try to learn as much about it as possible. And what a great support network, professional learning network. Super. And then can you tell our listeners also about Boss Women Media Group?
Yeah. So Boss Women Media was started by Marty McDonald. She's a phenomenal woman. She has pivoted so many times in her career. Right now, she has a phenomenal clothing brand, children's clothing brand. So the brand and organization has shifted and pivoted so many times. She would be a great candidate to talk about how things go as unexpected. But the genesis of Boss Women Media was an organization curated to Black female entrepreneurs, and to basically have a digital platform and a resource for women to raise capital, access to certain executives and individuals. My role was a little bit more on the entertainment side. When I was in LA, my access to entertainment executives when they were looking to do a docuseries, which was called, I hope I don't misspeak, but I believe it was called 100 Women at the Table. And this was a few years back. And it was a docuseries about all these different women that had struggled with trying to raise capital or launch their careers, and some of the hindrances they'd faced based on where they grew up or where they were or how they came into this world. And I think that was a really great platform that Marty created, so that women had not only this platform, but they had resources, they had access, and then they got a massive sponsorship and they went on the road. It ended up being like a traveling conference. It was called Black Girl Magic, and it was sponsored by Capital One. So they've pivoted and done so many amazing things. It's such a wonderful organization that basically just has anything and everything to do with women and what we could do to help one another. And I ultimately ended up being one of those resources for a lot of those women, which was a great accomplishment and a honor, candidly.
Yeah, very cool. Thanks for sharing that with everybody.
Yeah.
So this is a great moment in the podcast to turn it over to two of my favorite people, these young professionals. One actually is New York based, by the way, Kuki Tran. The other one is, I think, still LA based, and it's Cameron Dunbar. And I love to source young professionals for their insights. And it helps me really understand the dynamics at play in the world and refreshes me in important ways. I think they have a pretty challenging question for you today.
Okay, great.
So I'm going to turn it over to Cook and Cam to pose their question, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
This next question focuses on how organizations can practice more inclusivity in the workplace. The new awareness around Juneteenth in recent years has led many companies to begin recognizing June 19th as a paid holiday for their employees. As more employees are starting to become more vocal about celebrating diversity, what do you believe is the best way to make decisions on recognizing multicultural holidays within the workplace and best practices in celebrating these holidays without looking like you're following a trend?
I think that's a great question. I know DEI is something that is so important. It hasn't always been. And to me, that's surprising that it hasn't. I feel like sometimes it's a touchy subject when it shouldn't be, but it's definitely a question that I ask all the time when I'm looking into companies. And so I'm always curious to see how they respond or how they react to it, because I feel like it says a lot.
Absolutely.
Okay, Shay, there is Cooking Cam's question for you. What do you think?
I have a lot of feelings, especially, I mean, this was a perfect piggyback to what we were just talking about.
It is. Yeah.
DEI has been incredibly important throughout my career. With respect to how my organization currently, how Savills has handled DEI, not only do we have an internal board, which I've been involved with, but we have employee resource groups that touch on almost, if not every single facet of DEI and what kind of organizations and groups that our employees want to see and where they want help and who they want to lean on. And I think having these ERGs is incredibly helpful. Now, to be honest with you, I think when I was starting in my career, to Kuki's point about is this a trend? Are you checking a box? I think I felt like that a lot in my career, because you kind of felt like that token woman. And I think that's really evolved. I think and candidly, that's why I just don't think it's a trend anymore. I think that diversity of thought in the room, having a male, female perspective, just having diversity across all different things, age, sex, gender, race, it brings so much more value to the conversation. So I think one, what we're supporting DEI initiatives, we're doing a lot as an organization. So internally, I really think that as an organization, we kind of put our money where our mouth is. Externally, I actually just spoke on a panel with LinkedIn and IPC about a month ago with with one of their internal groups that was curated towards how are women advocating for DEI. And we sat down with a group of women that are in tech, finance, commercial real estate. And again, you're different facets, different strokes, different folks. You're running the gamut on all these different industries, and having that variety in the room to speak to what everyone's seeing and what they're doing. And to be honest, I think like if you're going to synthesize the whole conversation, I would walk away from it being like, speak up, say what you need and what you want. And I think people are a little trepidatious to do that because they're worried about what someone might say, or if you're going to get shut down, or you're not going to be honored for what it is that you need and what you want in your career, for who you are and what you stand for. And I just don't think that's the day and age we live in anymore. I think you have to have the courage, or just even find your voice to speak up and touch on what it is that's important to you within those boxes that people feel we have to check.
A lot of power in what you shared, just the base courage for sure. You also conveyed to me your own deep sense of compassion for others, just an understanding of their world, their context, their challenges. And that is also, in my mind, a very powerful starting point for someone in leadership, that they can really start with the other, and then if they start with the other, then they can figure out how they can actually help the other. If you start with yourself, it's pretty hard to figure out how to help the other because you don't know exactly what their needs are. So I love it.
Yeah, you're just naturally, I think, and again, this came from the voices of a lot of women in this room, and I'm referencing this LinkedIn IPC event where they said, even women that were 20, 30 plus years in their career that just said, I just didn't speak up. And it took me until now to realize that was something that I could do and something that I can ask for. And I for the good, again, for the good, the bad, and the ugly, I'll always speak up and I will always say something, whether I'm in place to do so. But I do think that that's something that, men and women struggle with. But in this particular instance, we were talking about how women feel that that's not something that's, comfortable for them. So I think giving women not only access to other leaders where they feel that they can be vulnerable and have that open dialogue is incredibly important. And I think that's just one way that you're promoting DEI within yourself, personally, professionally, internally, externally, however you want to look at it. I do know what Cookie meant by people felt like it was a trend and it was like taboo and this wasn't something that we were supposed to speak on. And that's just shifted. It goes back to like a very antiquated way of how we handled our business.
Yeah. One of the things that pops in my head around this is if LinkedIn is a great reference point. So you see companies posting, obviously on June 1st, Pride Month, celebrating the LGBTQ community. And while I applaud their commitments, for us, it's a commitment 365. It's not a commitment for the month of June.
For the month, right.
Just as we are committed to advancing women, just as we're advanced to committing, just raising up all humans. All humans. Right. And to your other point, there's strength and diversity. And anybody who doesn't get that, I almost feel bad for it because I think they're missing such an opportunity for their organizations and for themselves.
Yeah, it's crucial.
Yeah. So two last things before we finish up. One is if you could just elaborate a bit more on what Savills is doing around this work so that other organizations that maybe are just really struggling to figure out how to do the work, because it sounds like your organization is quite advanced in the effort. If you could give just a couple particulars, that would be great.
Yeah, of course. So I think something that I know our organization, myself included, is incredibly proud of and has been in place. I think I want to say that we kicked it off 2018 or 2019. And as you would imagine, commercial real estate really took a hit. So all major commercial real estate firms had to drastically cut back on our spending, right? So we had a junior broker development program, which the goal of that was to bring in an incredibly diverse group of young professionals, some that are out of college, some that are, early on in their career that are trying to kind of figure out what is this industry about and create some type of rotation program where they could be in, work with some professionals in brokerage and understand how brokerage works, which is, more in my field, workplace, project management, human capital, like financial consulting. And you touch on all these different facets and service lines within our business to better understand, is this career for me? Again, as I had mentioned, this is very much a business of you eat what you kill. So it's a huge risk jumping into this in your early 20s because you're not getting a salary, which is obviously incredibly risky for someone coming out of college. You've got student loans, you've got debt, you've got all that, right? So I think we had implemented this program where these young individuals with all different types of diversity stepped into New York City, Chicago, LA, London, and had this opportunity for, I think the first year is a full, you have a full salary. And the second year, obviously, hopefully we retain this talent and you kind of pick the direction you want to join and who you want to work with. And then we support them for a secondary year as they kind of get their feet wet in this career and figure out what it is that they want to do and their passion for it. So I think that was, given what our industry went through, to not cut a program like that is monumental. I think that was huge, that was something that we could keep going and was so important to the organization because candidly, that's something you could very easily cut, especially in a time of adversity and, all the turmoil that we are facing in the market, that's something that's still going strong today. And we've had, graduating class, just a phenomenal group of young professionals. And to my earlier point where I say, there's so few women, I think the stat is like 0.02% of women are in executive roles in commercial real estate. And it's like, well, if they don't exist, they don't exist. Because they're like, okay, why aren't there more women? Why aren't there more women? Well, you have to bring them up. You have to bring them up and you have to really build that group of young professionals and make them feel like this is a safe space in order to do so.
Brilliant. Values-based, vision-driven, long-term benefit. I love it. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Let's finish off by the one piece of advice, that one piece of advice you want every listener to walk away with.
Oh, no. I have so many things. One piece of advice. Oh, I have so many things. My dad is going to kill me. He's going to be like, I've given you so many sayings throughout the years, which is like, by the way, like that's all that's like kind of churning in my mind right now. Because my dad was like a sayings person. I have them like postered all over everything. I like the one that comes to my mind. I don't really want to say, but I'm going to say it just because it's funny. But it's like not the parting words. But if we're like targeting people in this type of industry where it's like you eat what you kill, my dad would always tell me, good things come to those who wait, but only the things left by those who hustle.
Ah, yes.
That was it. And if we're going back to like as unexpected, like when you're just, things happen and as unexpected, this is such a silly saying. And I've said it probably 100 million times in my life for when these types of unexpected scenarios happen. And it's a very old saying, but it has like a fun little tweak at the end of it. And it's when one door closes, another door opens. It's just the time in the hallway that sucks.
There you go.
So when things go as unexpected, I think you're sitting in this hallway trying to figure out what is your next move. And just know that there will be light at the end of the tunnel. It's just sometimes the time in the hallway.
And you have agency in choosing the next door. Don't feel like you're dependent on someone else to, hey, come to this door. You have agency. So I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for this. This has been brilliant. Thanks for your time today. Thanks for your wisdom. I hope to see you in New York next time I'm there. Yes, please come visit. We can take a stroll down Park Avenue. Perfect. All right. Thanks so much, Shay. Thanks, Scott. This episode of As Unexpected is sponsored in part by Semester at Sea, a study abroad program where students visit 10 countries on 3 continents, all while taking 3 to 4 college classes through Colorado State University. See course offerings and upcoming voyage itineraries at www.semesteratsea.org. Thank you for joining this week's episode of the As Unexpected podcast. The viewpoints and opinions of featured guests do not necessarily represent those of the Institute for Shipboard Education or Semester at Sea. Hit the like button, share it with your colleagues, family, and friends, and remember, be curious, be compassionate, be courageous. That's what it takes to lead as unexpected.